Welcome to the 517 In Your Business podcast. Here's your host, Mary Gaida.
We're back with another 517 In Your Business podcast brought to you by M3 Group, a full-service branding and marketing agency that helps brands thrive. Yarden Blumstein serves as the Executive Director of Conflict Resolution at Resolution Services Center of Central Michigan. And today we are going to talk about moving from talking at someone to talking with someone. Thanks for joining us, Yarden.
Thanks for having me. And I love the way you put that, talking at someone, talking with someone. Easier said than done.
Yeah, but I think if it's something that we all could learn in life, wouldn't the world be a different place?
Yes, it would.
So tell me, Yarden, what is a facilitator and where and why does one use a facilitator?
That's such a great question because, we hear certain terms and then we try to categorize them or we try to oh yeah, I know what that is. Facilitator. It makes so much sense. Except when was the last time you went looking for a facilitator? A facilitator is someone who helps a conversation happen. It helps a process happen. I mean, the word's simple, facilitates, but their art is to make it happen. Really bad analogy, but I have a friend who's making a wedding and they didn't hire a wedding planner. And they're like, well, what's a wedding planner? I'm like, they're the person who makes sure that the wedding happens the way it needs to so you could be in the wedding. A facilitator makes sure the conversation happens the way it needs to so you could be in the conversation.
Is there a difference between a facilitator and a mediator?
It's also a great question. In theory, no, because they're both really a neutral party. They're both really sitting in the middle and they're both trying to help a dialogue happen. You see mediator happening when we're trying to get to a specific point. So we're trying to get from point A to point B. So maybe there's a conflict or there's an issue or there's a legal framework involved and we're trying to resolve that dispute. Well, a facilitator could be more open-ended. Maybe it's a group conversation or a group discussion or just we're wanting to have creative dialogue. So yeah, same and also different.
All right. So what is the greatest difference that you see that a neutral facilitator adds to a discussion?
It's really interesting because I was recently facilitating a dialogue and someone says it doesn't look like you did anything. I was like, that's the art. The goal is to actually not be present and to allow the dialogue to happen, to kind of be like that shadow that you don't notice. The greatest difference actually is that the people respond differently. It ups the professionalism. We see in a completely different framework, but in crisis management, they always suggest you send more than one person because it forces you to be accountable and professional to be your best self, as well as having someone else there to play off of. So the real difference is it allows the parties to present the way they want to so that they can have the conversation they would like to have.
So well said. Is there a setting where maybe this third party, though, is not helpful?
I think about that often because there's so many conversations where I'm seeing that it is, and I mean, bad analogy, but it's like chicken soup. If it's not helpful, they're not supposed to get in the way. So then they won't
Right.
be there. And I'll be like, did I need that? Did I not? But did I really lose something by doing it? If you're trying to head towards, I guess, arbitration or towards someone else deciding or someone else taking the reins, that third party is going to get frustrating because you're going to keep pushing the issue to them and saying, you decide. And if they're doing their job well, they're not going to. So if you're really looking for someone else to decide something, or if you're looking to have it out, because the facilitator's job they're going to allow that to a point, but they're going to stop it. So if you're really looking to just kind of have the conflict without any goals of outcome or not any accountability, they're probably going to get in the way.
What is a moment that stands out to you as super meaningful or even transformational in this experience?
It's funny because when I first got into facilitation and mediation, and as I see people getting into it, it seems like a very technical skill. Like you're helping facilitate a conversation, you're asking some questions, and the question is what motivates you, what excites you. And when you do your job well, there's a moment that happens where people go from not wanting this to work to buying in. And
Mm,
that point, once you accomplish that buy-in process, your job is to really stay out of the way. You're trying to just, okay, we're getting somewhere here. And one of the things that I get to do is, it sounds counterintuitive, but I get to do divorce mediations. Why do I say I get to? Because if the divorce conversation turns into fight, we all know that a lot of times there is continued relationship, and now that relationship's frayed.
right.
If we can get people to a point where they can agree that there are disagreements present and there are differences that are not going to be address today, and we can rally around a common point. For example, I was in a mediation recently where they rallied around their children. It was so beautiful and like inspiring to see them. We are going to put a lot of our hard feelings aside so that we can take care of our kids. Moments like that are transformational, and seeing it happen is almost miraculous.
Absolutely. I start thinking about the role of a facilitator. And I imagine that you kind of learn at the end of the day, we're all the same, right? When we get emotional, we can't see straight. We can't think straight. So you're there just to bring everything down to kind of an even keel and get people to just be very clear on the facts and take away the emotions a little bit, but yet use your emotions because it's important to express yourself. So I would imagine you're highly intuitive and that you see this day after day after day. So you almost know how things are going to go.
It's interesting because, first of all, we think that they're always dynamic. So every
Yeah.
time we think we're making progress, something happens you don't expect, or there's times where we think this is never going to go anywhere. We should stop this now. And that's actually sometimes at the brink of the turning point. The other funny thing is that you would think then that a mediator facilitator then could do this in all the aspects of their life. It's like any other skill. You have to, there's times when I'm in conversation, someone's like, "Aren't you like a facil like you should be able to." The reminder is always helpful because, like you said, it's you want the person to be invested, and yet that investment's what gets in the way of the conversation that they're trying to have.
Yeah, it's a really tricky tightrope to walk. What do you wish others knew about facilitators? Because obviously I thought I had you pegged and I can't, I'm not all right, you know?
So, and that's the fascinating part is that we all kind of know they exist, and I wish people would test them out and use them.
Yeah, yeah.
Where can I bring you in? Where can I try this out and see what it does for me? And maybe it's a staff meeting. I want to see what that does, or maybe it's a family conversation, or we're getting ready for to write a will, or where try it and see what the difference is. I think it's a lot of like anything else, it's like I constantly meet people that say, "Well, I wish I would have known about you 10 months ago or 2 years." Well,
Right,
try it, see what happens. Maybe
right.
before someone goes to gear up for a divorce, they can start this process and see, well, what can we figure out before we hit the court? So it's a creative tool. How do you start getting creative about how you use it?
Yeah, fascinating. I would think that grieving families need you the most. Because I've watched so many families be torn apart. And if a mediator or a facilitator were there to help guide the conversation,
Yeah, it's such a challenging topic because, it's amazing that when we talk about crisis, pain, suffering, and challenge, in the moment, it's so hard to think about the things we need. And then
yes,
after the fact, we look back and we say, well, what could have helped? And whether it keeps the family together, at least supports them through the changes that they need to make. Does it need to be as painful and as challenging? I recently met somebody who does financial management for people going through sudden loss. And they said, because you're taking all your funding and you're in a moment of crisis, and then what does that do to you? And they say, let me just hold the reins while you get through this moment so that I can give you back those reins. And that's their skill and their business, which is fascinating. Same thing here, like you're saying, how do we bring a facilitator if we're going to have a couple of very tough conversations? Let's bring in the right supports.
if I wanted to learn more about facilitation, do you have a book recommendation and why the book that you would recommend?
That's a great question. I love to read, so I can make a ton of book recommendations. I just finished reading Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Whether you want to get into negotiation or soft skills, or whether you just want to read some interesting stories, he was the lead hostage negotiator for the US. And he talks about that if you want to get somewhere in a conversation, it starts with connecting with the other side. And you think about that for a second. He's negotiating with people that are holding people's lives, and he had to be able to connect in order to begin to conflict. Any business management model knows that if we want to have good conflict, it starts with connection. So I've gained a lot from that. If you want to learn more about facilitation mediation, there's a ton of books out there. But if you want to learn about just simple tools to enhance your conversations in life, I've really enjoyed his book.
So let's talk about Resolution Services Center of Central Michigan and what your center specifically does.
So, you can get facilitators and mediators anywhere, and a lot of them are really great at what they do. We like to specialize because sometimes people say, well, your job is to make sure we get a resolution. And for a lot of times, people say, well, if you can't do that for us, why would I bring you in? We like to say that we're stepping into conflict to build community. Our goal is to build that foundation. Hopefully, it leads to resolution, but even if it doesn't, if the foundation's built, it should take you somewhere. that will be helpful to you. So a lot of times, we do get a decent amount of resolutions, and with those, we have a high follow through rate because people agreed to it. So when you empower people, they usually do it. But it's very unoften where someone actually engages in our conversation and doesn't gain from it. So they might say, we couldn't resolve things, but now I get their perspective. Or now
Mm,
we've been able to at least have a conversation. And that's really where we see goal. You talk about community facilitations, you talk about some of the work we're doing in schools. The goal isn't the immediate conflict or the immediate dispute. It's really the broader picture. The culture shift is really where we see our art and work.
right. Is it almost getting to a point where you could agree to disagree?
That's already a step. I mean, when you can
Yeah,
say, and unfortunately today we see a lot of times that people just use that line before they even hear the other side. It's being
right.
willing to hear, connect, get angry, and still respect. Like to have the
Mm.
full process and recognize the other person as a human.
Let's talk about the center's mission overall and how that's expressed in the work you do.
So the center's mission is to step into conflict towards building community. And recently we just did a deep dive at our mission. They say especially a nonprofit, but really anybody, it's using mission and vision to drive impact and growth. And we've been doing a lot of that. Where can we build community? Where do we connect with community? Um, People say you must be doing great because conflict's all over the place. The art isn't to find or create conflict, it's to engage conflict in a meaningful way towards community and teaching people about that tool. So the deal, world would say we should go out of business, not only because there's no conflict, but really because people gain tools to engage with conflict. So we're doing a variety of things. We're doing mediations, we're doing facilitated dialogues, we're also doing training, saying how do we empower your system or elevate your system to where you don't need us, or that you want to consult us less often, or that you're using so many people like us that you forgot to call us. That's all what we see as part of our work.
Right. Tell me more about restorative justice and what that is.
So our other arm is the restorative justice arm. We do mediation, we do restorative justice, and we see them both as a process of elevating conflict. And restorative justice is the idea of how do we get together? It's three simple questions that are extremely complex. The first one's what happened. The second one is who is impacted, and the third one is where do we go from here? Seems really simple, but there's a lot that has to go into here, the finesse of those questions. And it's used in victim offender settings, it's used in classroom conflict, it can be used in bullying conversations, it can be used in neighborhood disputes, it can be used in a fraternity setting as well as at work. What happened? What do you think happened here? And how do we slow down the conversation to gain your perspective and for you to gain other people's perspectives? And we're using that primarily. One of the main places we use that is in schools. We're in a variety of schools where they're using us to bring a restorative thought process to their school. We place a facilitator there. We have a dial, and that facilitator is handling one-off conflicts with the goal of creating a culture shift towards a restorative thought process. We're also doing it in community settings, in a variety of places in the community where really it's again, how do we slow down the conversation enough so that we can hear the questions, gain the framework, and then say, well, that's what you thought happened. What needs to happen now?
And so as you're going through this process with restorative work, how is accountability upheld?
It's interesting that a lot of times we feel if we don't punish or have a consequence, or I don't want to say threat, but that's like the word that comes to mind, that people
Hmm.
don't take us seriously. And on the outside, like on the most external frameworks, there's a truth to that. Studies are showing us, science is showing us, we're all kind of shifting to this idea that actually there's a certain amount of that we're reinforcing patterns, especially against like parenting approaches. We know that as we step into this pattern, there's oh, well, I need to mess up, and then you need to do this to me, and then I need to respond this way to you. This is shifting all that in that how do I get you to show up in the conversation? I need you to take ownership. There needs to be consequence, there needs to be accountability, there also needs to be education. There's a term I once heard, the difference between teaching and education is teaching is I'm trying to give you something, education is I'm trying to bring up something within you. So restorative
Mm.
is really how am I helping you step into the framework of your life? You did something. What do you think you did? What do you think needs to happen? It's a lot harder. And that's also why neutrality is so important because if I'm caught in conflict, there's something I'm trying to make you do. Well, a neutral
Right.
person's like, I can help negotiate this here, but I don't have invested emotional interest in the same way.
If someone wants to use your services, what would the whole process? Walk me through it.
It's rather simple and straightforward. You go to our website, you can go to rsccm.org, which is Resolution Services Center of Central Michigan. Also, conflictresolutions.org works just as well. You can find our number on there and you can call us. There's someone who usually answers the phone. If not, they'll get back to you rather quickly. And you can say, I heard about you. I want to learn more. Or what can you do to help me? Or this is the conflict I'm experiencing. We're very much a yes organization. So it's going to start with yes and then figure out where to go from there. And especially where too, it's a tool that most people don't know how to embed or use. What we're finding is call us. Worst comes to worst, you're not in conflict. Not the worst thing.
Right. Do you do corporate trainings, by the way?
We do. We do corporate trainings on a variety of topics, de-escalation, communication, team building, vision planning, and we also custom build. People ask me, how can you be so flexible in what you build? And we don't want you to form your conflict based on the tools that we have. We want to build the tools towards a conflict you have and say, well, it seems like you use a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Someone asked me if you could work on trust building amongst the team, and I started doing an assessment. I was like, it seems like you guys do trust each other. You just struggle with communication. So we could build trust. I don't know what's going to help what you're struggling with.
So, what's one takeaway you want people to walk away with after listening to this conversation?
I want people to think about that, there's a line, and I don't mean to come across as crass or as like cliche, that if I do the same thing again and again and I expect different outcomes, that's a definition of insanity.
Hmm.
And how many times we step into the same conversation using the same tools of yesterday, hoping it's going to go different. And I want to challenge people, whether it's through us or through another center or another professional or through anyone else. If I want to see a different outcome, what am I going to do differently this time? So that the conversation is rewarding for everybody. What
Yeah.
intervention, like you said, tools are only as good as you use them.
Right. And I think it's hard work, and everything that you do well takes practice and repeated behavior, and you have to keep working hard. But I bet when someone leaves and you've helped them sort of come to a resolution, there's just this calm that comes about you because you like, wait a minute, that wasn't so hard, was it? And now I can try this again the next time this happens and call you back in as needed. And I just think it's such a great thing to offer the world. And I hope people definitely would seek you out and use your services. In fact, I saw that you recently received a very impressive award for your work in suicide prevention. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, thank you. I did, and I appreciate it. And talking about, people ask me what the connection is between, resolution services, conflict resolution, facilitation, and suicide prevention.
Hmm.
It's something that started as a side project, I would say. Not that it's a key issue, but it wasn't part of my role. And it is difficult conversations. How do we step into something that is high stakes, high pressure, a lot of emotion, to ask very simple, direct questions and be able to respond the way that's needed? So that is the connection, and it is a passion of mine because through the right tools, we can do a lot of great work towards saving people's lives and empowering them towards the steps in their life that come next.
Yeah, that's deep. That's really good work that you do, and congratulations again on your award. Anything
Thank
else
you.
you want anyone listening to know?
We covered so many important things today. I really appreciate the time and attention you're giving to this. I guess what I want people to know is that no matter what conflict they find themselves in, whether it's with themselves, with a family member, with a neighbor, with somebody at work, there's options. And I encourage people, the word courage comes from the root word core, which means vulnerability. If someone wants to be
Mm,
brave, they have to be willing to be vulnerable. And that's scary. And we all know that. And I encourage people that if you feel like, well, it's impossible, impossible also stands for I'm possible. As you step into it, take the step to embrace the conflict, be vulnerable, and see where it gets you.
you're giving me goosebumps all over again.
Thank
I love
you.
these deep thoughts with you, Yarden. Appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast today, and I hope you'll come back and talk some more with us.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the 517 In Your Business podcast. Get to know local businesses better by reading 517 Business Magazine. Get your subscription at 517mag.com/subscribe.